Dear all, I am Aline. I am the Italian General Guide Commissioner. I am very glad to welcome you to this webinar in which we will talk about the reception of disabled children in Scouts unit. We are very excited because this is our first webinar in English, and we hope it will be useful for you. The issue of disability is very important to us. In recent years, parents of special children have increasingly turned to us looking for help. These children and young people have different types of difficulties: physical difficulties, mental difficulties, learning difficulties. They are precious children because they teach us how to grow in acceptance, attention, and love. In Italy, we have therefore created a national patrol which has provided our leaders with many ideas on how to stand by and accompany these children. This national patrol has also drafted special conferences for our national training camps. The people you will meet today are the members of this national patrol. So have a good time, and we hope you will enjoy it.
Thank you, Aline. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this presentation of the experiences of the patrol. Our goal, as Aline has said, is to support the true inclusion of boys and girls with disability in the full application of the scouting method according to the original thought of Baden-Powell. So we are thinking that we will try to show this evening here the connection between the original ideas of Baden-Powell and how much they are actual, they are real in these days, even if they are coming from 100 years ago. We will use a presentation. So now we will start. You may write comments. You may write questions in the chat. We will try to answer to everyone at the end. In any case, we will leave also our email address as a pattern. So if you will have any questions in the future, you may write, and we will try to give our experience. I don't want to say that we will answer to you. We will give our experience. So we will try together to find a good solution for boys and children that the Providence is giving to us. So just a second to share the presentation. So this is the first slide. I have already just said what we are going to do. We are here speaking Serena. You see Serena. You have seen Serena near to me. Yeah. And I am Pepe, Andrea. This is already the address of our team, the pattern. I will send again at the end. Starting now, it's important for me to thank for their help in preparing the slides, both Maddalena and Alberto, the team leaders, and many other members. We are only here to speak, but we are a team, and the team is working all together for this presentation. I want to thank immediately also Davide, who is taking care of the technical part of this webinar. Luvi, who helped us to prepare the poster, and Marisa and Cataldo, they pushed us to take this initiative with Aline and the General Commissioner. I remind you, please, if you have questions, write. We will try to answer during the webinar or at the end, or in case you may write to our address and see, and we will try to answer as soon as possible. We start this reflection about the presence of boys and girls in the Scout movement. We want to highlight how Baden-Powell's ideas on the subject were ahead of the average of the time, but also how much the presence of boys and girls with disability was accepted and indeed suggested since the early years. Certainly, the solutions were coherent, consistent with the conception of disability typical of the first half of the last century, but very significant. In Eyes to Scout Mastership, 1999, more than 100 years ago, Baden-Powell wrote this. This is copied from there, page 6, if you want to check. This text is copied from Eyes to Scout Mastership, as I was saying. We all know the basis of scouting for Baden-Powell. He wrote that in each boy or girl, there is at least a 5% of good, and the Scoutmaster's ability must be to find it and make it grow until it becomes 80 or 90%. Everyone, that is, every single girl or boy has their own 5%, which can also be different from the 5% of another one. Everyone has his or her own particularity and diversity without excluding anyone, because everyone is different. And still, I'm not talking about skills or abilities. This is education, opposed to instruction, as BP is saying. And it seems to me important to underline that the term education comes from Latin, a Latin word which means precisely, exactly, pull out, to take out from the person the right part, from the 5% to the 80 or 90. But again, in Aids to Scout Mastership, Baden-Powell wrote this chapter dedicated, it is page 47, dedicated explicitly to children with disabilities, and describes with an evident surprise the great result of this experience for children. It was not a general appreciation of the effort of some boys. We have much more. Baden-Powell understood the potential of the method, and we have in these lines an explicit recognition of the success of the Scout educational method in improving the situation of boys and girls with a disability.
Pepe, sorry, we're seeing the same slide.
Yeah, we are. Okay. I'm still speaking of this one.
Okay.
We go now to the next one.
Okay.
But already here, what I want to highlight that already here we find some key concepts. Pride in what they could be able to do, and no need for different or more reduced tests than necessary. The beginning, short look at the history. At first, it seemed that the best way to describe scouting for children with disabilities was the concept of extended scouting, as if scouting were being stretched out in its application. Isabelle Borel, the first Swiss guide with a motor disability, suggested calling it malgré tout. She didn't want to consider people with disabilities to be considered an added part to the movement, but a living part of it, heart of it. Guide despite all and despite physical impediments. The concept expressed using this term MT was interpreting the spirit of this new frontier of scouting better than the previous concept of extended. For this reason, it was adopted in many countries. But the application was in line with what was happening in schools. So the result was units composed exclusively of people with a disability, the same kind of disability. This entailed the need for a different role for the leader, who had to be an expert of that specific disability, and limited the positive effect of the relationship with other children. Baden-Powell's idea on the subject of people with difficulties later was clarified and developed. And in 1940, in the last preface of Scouting for Boys, he wrote that the aim of the leaders is to help not merely the promising boy, but also, and more especially, the duller one. We try to understand now the reasons the Scout experience help. We are so used to this concept that they seem to be absolutely obvious and normal, but these aspects give these aspects are giving to our method a particular effectiveness, especially with the most difficult boys and girls. Most difficult doesn't mean that we are speaking of person with a disability. We know the classic, ask the boy, means the centrality of the boy, always playing. Ask the boy, imagine how particularly important is for a person who is aware of having possibilities, but cannot express them. Then always playing, never for fun. Playing the game is the framework within which the activities take place. This situation makes possible to mobilize and activate all the resources of the person. The game attracts and engages at the same time and is committing you each person to the improvement. Give responsibility, we know. If I stimulate the intelligence ability of a person, he will do the best. If I express underestimation or excessive criticism, he will adapt to this situation. Doing one's best means that everyone is a measure of himself. External measures are not valid. This implies that everyone can be measured as a referent, measure of himself. Even the person with a limited capacity is able to be compared with his own capacity. In short, and this is the most important, the person will grow in a double network in the same time as an individual in a social network, and this is the core of our educational method. We go now to what we did, what we have done. We did meetings, trainings, articles, proposals, support for leaders. We started with a questionnaire. The main role of the association, we think, is to support and guide the leaders in carrying out their service. We do not take the place of the leaders in their functions, but support them, faithful to that principle of subsidiarity, which gives substance to being a Christian association. The experience of some is therefore made available for all. The first step for this reason was the creation of a questionnaire to understand how many children with disabilities were already in the association. The results were presented in meetings with the participation of many leaders. It was also a way to make the leaders who in their units were already experiencing the reality of the inclusion, to make them actively part of a net. We were present at the training camps, at the school camps, and on magazines, in our magazines. We wrote articles for our magazines, especially the one for the leaders. We organized training conference in each territorial area of the association. We proposed a modification of the directive rules of the. We studied and we have seen that it was useful to improve it. We prepared a webinar in December with more than 200 subscribers, but the video was seen more than 500 times, but I will tell you more about. Yes, this was Baden-Powell was saying about the importance and the fact that the persons, the children with disability, were able to do things and difficult things too, and the success was important for themselves. Next, please. This is a short look at what was in this history of scouting. At the beginning, the idea was the inclusive scouting, as the idea was to extend the scouting to all the others. In fact, this was working for a period, but Isabelle Borel, a Swiss guide, had the idea to call this part of the scouting malgré tout, to highlight the fact that she willing to consider people with disabilities to be not an added part of the movement, but a living part of it, the heart of it. So the concept of malgré tout, MT, was appreciated much more than the one of extended. The application was in line with what was happening in schools. So the result at the end was that units were composed exclusively of people with disability, the same kind of disability. And this changed the role of the leaders of the unit, because they had to be expert of that specific disability. It's important to highlight, to remind that in 1940, in the last version of preface of Scouting for Boys, Baden-Powell wrote this important sentence: the aim of the leaders is to help not merely the promising boys, but also, and more especially, the duller boy. We said, prossima. We said something about the basics of the Scout experience, and here the attention is to this simple concept that we know very well. Ask the boy, always playing, never for fun, give responsibility, do your best. This is for us, it is very simple. This is the basic. But the result, the final result, and the reasons why the Scout experience helps persons with a disability is that the attention to the individual and the social network, these two different levels are working together. So these factors are defining the potential for such a success of our educational method for everyone, not only the person with a disability. Then I was speaking of what's coming, what we did as a team, as a patron. So we did meetings, training, articles, proposals, support for leaders. Prossima. We prepared a questionnaire. We think that the main role of the association is to support the guide and the leaders and guide the leaders in carrying out their service. We do not take the place of the leaders in their functions, but we support them, because the principle of subsidiarity is giving substance, is giving a concrete reality to being a Christian association. The experience of some is therefore made available for all. And the first step was the creation of the questionnaire to understand how many children with disability were in the association. Prossima. We organized the presence at school camps and in magazines. La prossima. We will speak. I will speak again of articles. Then ancora la prossima. Training conference in each area of the association. Important, thank you, modification of the directives, I will tell you more. And last we prepared in December a webinar, technically more easy to handle than this one. I must say we don't understand what happened, but what is important that we fix it, and now we are looking directly what we are saying and doing. Prossima. Presence in the magazines is not only to keep attention on the topic at a high level, but above all, the goal is to give concrete, applicable indication to the leaders on how to manage everyday situations. It is not a coincidence that one of the articles provides a guide on how to set up a dialogue with the family of the child with a disability. Suggestion, they are in any case good for welcoming any child in the units. Of course, you would all like to welcome every boy and girl who comes to us. We are always happy when this could happen, but we have to deal with our concrete abilities, with the real problems. For this reason, cannot be the single leader of unit who decides to welcome a boy, girl with disabilities. It must be the group of the leaders of the group who do it. Simply, in few years, whoever enters the caps of Lady Bears today will be an explorer or a guide, and you must be ready to accompany him or her in this growth, or to tell the parents what are the limits of our educational support in the growth of their children. Prossima. We organized 4 meetings on the theme of the inclusion of girls and boys with disabilities in the Scout activities. We had them in Rome, in Milano, in Treviso, and in Pescara. We had about 100 participants in each one, so a lot of people. We were going to plan another one, but we had to stop because this type of meetings in presence are not possible at the moment. But to continue to support the leaders during this time, when we cannot meet in group, in person, we have organized a webinar, and now I'll tell you the next one. La prossima. Protagonist, participant, onlooker, planning the inclusion with the 3 times rule. This is a video we made, we prepared to be a separate training tool, available and for the benefit of groups or districts or local groups for local training or meetings. From the webinar, we also drew 2 other shorter speeches, and in total, in a couple of months, we have more than 850, 200 subscribers and 500 views only for that one. But we, as I said, we divided the main video in 3 parts to help people use this support in training, local trainings. La prossima. In the training camp, among the tasks, the talks planned in the training camps, we presented the topic of inclusion. First, we started from training camps for group leaders, then also in the training camps for leaders of different branches and different levels. According to the various occasions, the main objective of the conversation, once the general theme was presented, our role was mainly to listen to questions, problems, experiences. The goal was to facilitate confrontation and then give answers that could help the leaders in their service. This is our proximity. This is our stay near the person, help to find local solutions, good for that group and not with the recipe good for everyone everywhere. La prossima. It was important to study and develop a passage, a chapter in the directive rules of the association, of the Italian Association. They are now clearer and more explicit on this point. Welcoming children with disabilities must be an opportunity for enrichment for all, and not a flattening or simplification of our educational commitment. This aspect is very important. Boys and girls with disabilities do not ask for pity or simply to be facilitated in their path. Overcoming difficulties is part of the educational growth for all, including persons with a disability. And it is important to underline that, on the contrary, a simply pietistic attitude has the opposite effect of the desired one on the educational level. So the presence in the unit of a person with disability must not limit the activities to other boys and girls. The leader preparing the programs and activity must take into account their presence in such a way as to promote it and ensure that it becomes an added value also for the other children, who will learn to see and perceive the richness in diversity. La prossima. Before I go further to talk un attimo, some concrete experience suggestion, I want to ask myself a question. In this period, boys and girls are experiencing unparalleled situation of isolation and separation. We all know the consequence of these pandemics. Now I wonder, what happens if one of our boys or girls has a minor accident and has to use a wheelchair for 1 month? It happened in my group just a few months ago. I'm sure that each leader will strive to find a way for them that still allows them to participate in the activities, so as not to add the damage of exclusion to that of the accident, and finally to the general damage of the period. Well, if you do this for one boy or one girl, why not to do the same for others too? It is possible that the only difference is between those we already know and those we meet for the first time? No. So now Serena will help us to understand better how to facilitate inclusion.
Okay, thank you, Pepe. So I'm taking over, but before we go into that, somebody asked in the comments what was in the questionnaire we actually sent around. It wasn't sent to families, it was sent to unit leaders. So basically, what was asked about was how many children with disabilities we had in our units, if we had some children who were not allowed to join the group because of a peculiar disability they had, so because we couldn't actually allow them to join, which kind of relationships we as leaders had with families and all of the services that actually help children with special needs, so schools, all of those therapy, I don't know, services and doctors and stuff, and what was the actual time they spent in their units. So if they actually started as young children and they moved on, or they actually dropped out. So that was asked to the leaders. And we also would like to add that we write articles on the Association magazines, the one that goes out to unit leaders and group leaders, where we actually talk to all of the leaders about how to deal with certain situation. We give them tools to try and sort out, for instance, to sort out how to decide if a child can join, if we're able to let a child join our unit. So we are present as a patrol, even in this with this tool. I mean, with this in this way. So we were talking about how to facilitate inclusion. So Pepe, if we can go to the next slide. Sorry, Davide, you're doing it now. So when we are confronted with a person with disabilities that wants to join our group, the most common question we actually ask ourselves is, will we be able to handle this situation? The problem is, we shouldn't actually ask ourselves this question just when a person with disabilities is involved, but with every single time we meet a new child that approaches scouting. So we have to remember that we work on the risk of exclusion and the potential for inclusion, because scouting has this potential. And we have to remember also that we are educators. We are not the main responsible persons, not the main caregivers, basically. And we're not raising these children alone, but we are a support to parents. and we can't claim that we know their child better than they do. And we're not medical practitioners. So we are scout leaders, and that's not easy anyway. But we can't think that we can approach this situation with the knowledge of a therapist, a physician, or a physical therapist. And as Pepe was saying earlier, there is no recipe. So we have people in front of us. Every single child is unique. Every situation is unique. And we need to approach this in a very different way every single time. So we know that we need to be flexible. We need to use our imagination. And we know that a good leader is not the one that actually plans the same activities every year just because they worked fine the year before and just because he or she likes it that way. So the good leader is the one that through his or her positive approach and doing actually allows the children to bring out their abilities, interests, and inclination. And that works for every single child. Davide, can we go to the next one, please? Thank you. So, and that's what we were saying. You can't actually have the same activity done every single year, the same yearly program done every single year, because you have different children in front of you. So we have to liaise with the families in order to plan our activities well. We have to set goals, figure out some kind of schedule. And it is vital to have this good relationship with the family. So we need to trust them, they need to trust us, and we have to make sure also that we're not promising anything that's too far in the future. So we need to agree with the family on each and every step. And of course, as I said before, we must not claim that we know their child better than they do. So we need to liaise perfectly, otherwise it will be very, very difficult to actually help the child. So our goals, as you can see here, are clear, unique to the child, but we also need to be very, we need to bear in mind their limitations and what activities they can take part in and which ones they can't. We need to evaluate everything with the parents, and we need to think about what's the possible progression for them in an activity we're making. And of course, we have to consider whether they can participate or not in the specific activity. And third point, super important, we need to be very open-minded, because we somehow start, we meet persons and we make an opinion on them, we have prejudices, but children with disabilities can actually blow our minds and show something incredible. So next one, please, Davide. Okay, so the most important tool we're actually giving to leaders, and we're stressing it a lot whenever we talk about disabilities in scouting, is what we have translated as 3 times rule. So that meaning that in Italian we call it la regola dei 3 tempi. It means that every single child, and we're not just talking about children with disabilities, this should actually work for every single children, but it works perfectly for children with disabilities, can be protagonist, participant, or onlooker during activities. So basically, let's start with an example so we can help you understand what we mean. So if we're thinking about the summer camp, where everyone is actually very motivated, it brings out energies, and we have a lot of activities and a lot of time to spend with children. We actually, I don't know if you do that, but we usually do a lot of sports and matches and races and competitions during the summer camps. Having in mind that we might have a person, I don't know, with a physical impairment, so walking impairment, if we are holding a running race, of course, that person can't be an active protagonist. They can't actually run in the competition. But if we have them be the referee, for instance, they can be participants anyway, even if they're not running. Or if we're having a same person with a walking impairment, if we're holding an archery match, which is a completely different thing, that person can actually be a protagonist, can be there, can actually join the competition. There will be certainly times when this person needs to be an onlooker, only that. The important thing is that to remember that when planning activities, of course, we have to make sure that the child is neither an onlooker at all times, nor a participant, nor a protagonist at all times. It has to be balanced. These times needs to be balanced. But if we actually make sure that this child, the child with disabilities, but also the other children actually have a time when they're protagonists, a time when they're participants, and a time when they're onlooker during our activities, we will actually help them be included in our units and in our groups. So it is very important also to remember that all children are unique, and something which can work perfectly for one doesn't work well maybe for someone else. So if we're talking about a boy or a girl with no disabilities, no special needs, maybe a solo path in the mountains is a good idea for testing their sense of bearing, but it might be the same test for a child with disabilities just to find their way using public transport. So depending on what our goals for our children are, we need to actually plan our activities accordingly. Okay, just checking if there are questions. No, okay.
No, the only questions arrived that you have already answered, Serena. This was the last. No, we have another one, but it is only with the. Puoi cambiare slide. This is the last one. So we thank you. We are deeply sorry for the technical problem we had at the beginning. We can confirm that the video will be available for everyone without the technical problem. Of course, we'll try to change to add the right parts. I don't see. You can write as it is written in the chat. You can write to pattugliadisabilità@fse.it. We will try to answer with the same attitude we have expressed here. We don't have the final solution. We have ideas, we have experience, we can exchange, we can listen, and we can answer to see together which is the best solution for your exactly that boy or girl that you have in your unit. If you have questions and you want an immediate answer, you may write now, so we can wait some minutes. I see priority. Yes, I thank you, Renaud. Yes, it's exactly your idea is exactly what we are trying to do. We are in strong contact with the Italian Church. We had in our trainings, we had often the Italian responsible for the inclusive, the inclusive attitude of the church, of the parish. So we are trying to work together on this matter. You know that Pope Francesco is paying a lot of attention on the last one, to the people who is far from the center and could be excluded. So his attention is also our attention on this item. What are the limits of type of disability to include disabled person in unities? Renaud, we don't have an answer. We have to see together, situation per situation, boy for boy, what or girl for girl, what is the right possibility. We have seen a lot of different situation in our units, in the units we contact. But we will, if you want to write to us, we try to give a better, a better answer to your questions. Italian Association, we meet 3 to 8 times a month. Yes, Renaud, you know very well us. You know us. I confirm that the video will be soon as possible ready, and we will publish on our web channel.
Okay, Pepe, Maddalena is preparing something. We need to, okay, she's writing to us. Okay, so Aline was suggesting that we told them the first class hike for a boy who actually can't walk and forced to bed. So basically what they did with this boy was that since he just couldn't actually spend his night alone in the woods as we do normally, he just needed to he just spent his night home alone, so he had to take care of himself instead of having to do it in the woods in a tent in nature. So that was actually measured to what he could do. So his test, his first class hike test, was to just spend the night alone, home alone. So that's another example of how you can arrange and plan activities according to the goals that you set for children with disabilities. That was it.
Okay, we will. I see here that we will send that Marisa and Cataldo will take care of sending to the UIGSE secretary so from there to all general commissioner. So you will receive the slides as soon as possible, and the video will be available on the channel. Let me see. We have. Thank you. Thank you to you for your attention and participation. Sorry again for the technical problem at the beginning. To say what to say more. We hope to see you, but to see not in video, but we hope to finish this situation and to meet and to have the possibility to exchange not only via this channel, this video, but to exchange experience and say and speak directly and exchange experience and to find solutions together. I don't know. I don't want if Serena, you want to add something?
No, I just wanted to say thank you, everyone, for being here.
Everyone. And just to say hello and see you soon as possible. We will send now you in online a video the Italian Association has prepared to speak about what we do, what the European Scouting is doing, even in today, even in this situation. So hope to see you. Write if you have questions. We are here to answer. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, Pepe, Maddalena was saying that we can also send the questionnaire we send to unit leaders if they want to.
Okay.
So
we will
it will be in Italian, or maybe we will try and translate it. I don't know.
No.
Still don't know. But
no,
yeah,
we'll try to translate. Okay.
Okay.
It's
So
not so difficult.
Okay, so I don't think there are more any questions.
Davide, puoi mandare l'altro video?
Yeah, just send the advertisement. Okay, so just one last thing we promise. This video will be actually sent out with English subtitles as well. So you will have it in an English version as well.
Okay.
So thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Have a nice evening, everyone.
Ciao.